Welcome back to another reading and correcting of Stepping Up with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. Today we are doing chapter 80. 5 whippers waited for them in the next room, along with more rats than Tibs cared to count. You guys mind if I take on that one? If I take that one on? That one. You guys mind if I take that on by myself? Jekyll asked. Yes, Tibs replied, glaring at the fighter. The rats can't hurt me, Jekyll said, and I'm pretty sure I can take the whippers on without trouble. You guys can jump in if you decide I'm in over my head. Then we might as well go in with you, I said. We already know you're in way over your head. I believe it could be good for him to test his limits here, the cleric said, rather than against the boss. I'm with Cumdar. Jekyll looked at Tibs. Fine, he replied with a sigh, but if you die here, I'm going to hurt you. Think, so said, that I need to find a way to keep anyone as strong as Jekyll off this floor. The fighter moved rubble with a foot, bent down, and straightened, holding a silver coin. Jekyll had turned to stone as he stepped into the room and then ignored a rat biting at his ankle. Then, when a whip hit him, he caught it and pulled the whipper off its feet. A few punches and kicks, and there were only broken stones left. The other 4 went as easily, and stepping on the rats took care of them. You can just make them stronger, Tibs replied. Rather not kill everyone else who reaches this floor. Might be time to look for a way to get those strong enough to unlock the doorway to the 3rd floor without going through these, he said. Not sure how to do that. I haven't seen anyone approaching Jekyll's level demonstrate anything I could use as a key. How many are close to his level? Tibs asked. I didn't realize Stowe could sense that, and having someone to compare that with what he felt could help him get better at it. A few. You, Dawn, Arkham, Salis, Aru. Who are Arkham and Salis? Tibs didn't think he'd ever heard the name before. 2 of the nobles. Oh, that would be why. Tibs, Jekyll called, let's move on. The fighter had handed him 4 silvers, a dozen copper, and 1 amulet, which the guild gave them 24. You know, dungeon, Jekyll said, this room is worth more than that. He rolled his eyes at Jekyll's acted disappointment. Telling me he can get a lot more loot, a lot more on the next floor, and he said, sounding amused. This is plenty, Tibs said as they walked. 4 silver covers the room for the month, along with the repairs to from this run. Unless you destroy your armor again, as commented. Which I used my coin for? Tibs snapped, and the archer rolled his eyes in his head. Found the idea that yet again, Stowe. And found that yet again Stowe used one of his ideas of using, or appreciated Tibbs's laughter. Tibbs was certain he was no longer imagining sharpness in Mez's tone anymore. So, Mez said as they stopped at the entrance of the rattling encampment, we're letting Tibbs off on his own while the rest of us do all the fighting? How about I, Tibbs replied, fighting the urge to grind his teeth. Try something? Figured this place was the safest one to do it in. That would help them at the same time. Yeah, what? He figured this place was the safest one to do this in. And that it would help them at the same time. The walls, floors, and ceilings would survive. The one problem he could see, and probably turned that into an exercise, was how angry Mez was making him. If that became what he focused on, he wasn't sure the archer would count on his element to survive. What do you have in mind? Jekyll asked, unbothered, while carrying a steady Tibs. Something to impress Stowe. Nothing more, hopefully. Let water calm him and wished he could keep that once he switched elements. You should step back. It's about to get really hot. Are you sure it's a good idea? Karina asked before Tibs stepped into the room. It'll be fine, he replied. He was calm. He was mildly concerned about the pain he'd inflicted on the rattling in the room, but reminded himself they were there to test him and make him stronger. Was he doing this because he hated the rattlings? Was it a good reason? Just let him do his thing, Mez said, and muttered something Tibbs didn't catch as he focused on remaining calm. Mez, you don't want to step further back. I wouldn't want you to get hurt by accident. I'm not. Let's back up to the other room, Jekyll said. Call when it's done, Tibbs. Tibbs stepped into the room and the fighter let off a curse. Then they hurried away. Mez, the only one protesting. He let water go with reluctance and fought to keep his anger on the rattlings instead of Mez. He and Mez could resolve this, he hoped. Rattlings, on the other hand, as soon as the fire licked his fingers, it blossomed into an expanding ball. Tibbs laughed along with the roaring fire. He loved this. The rawness of the destruction. Who cared for plans or being careful when he could simply remove everything that ever bothered him? As he stopped mid-turn, this was really getting on his nerve, but he was with the others, and they hadn't done anything to warrant his being embraced by this wonderful heat. He'd deal with the archer later, when only he would be the recipient. Now, he had creatures he hoped would gain nightmares from this, the way they had given him some. He screamed, and the heat pushed against everything. Rattlings screamed in response. He smiled. He hadn't known they could scream. That was great. Let them learn Tibbs wasn't a weakling. Let them be the one to wake at night, stifling a scream so they couldn't cause the others to worry. Never again would he let something scare him. He would remove it before it ever got the chance. He ignored his name being called. He was too busy sensing for more rattlings to obliterate, making plans for finding Sebastian and making sure this time the men didn't escape. He wouldn't threaten his family, his town, his family, and the guild. Oh, he was going to burn that building down as soon as he was done with the run. Actually, why bother with the run when he had stars erupted along with the pain at the back of his head? He spun, ready to remove who dared to. Jekyll was smoking before him, and the shock caused Tibbs to let go of fire. The heat diminished but wouldn't go away. The walls glowed from it, and cursing, Tibbs pulled that into him. The walls turned dark, then snapped loud enough Tibbs didn't hear Jekyll's angry shout. Genny? A fearful Stowe yelled. That is it, Jekyll snapped, looking annoyed and having to repeat himself. I saw, she replied, awe and fear in her voice. I'm sorry, Tibbs said. Never again, Tibbs. Jekyll started. I don't want you to ever use fire again. There is no controlling fire. All it does is destroy everything. That wasn't true. Tibbs hadn't turned it against Mez, but Jekyll was too angry to listen. Must disagree, Kumdar said. Tibbs was most certainly in control of the element. Have you looked around? Jekyll snapped. Tibbs did so now. The large cavern was back to the normal brightness still maintained. The walls were broken and blackened. Mounds of melted stone, also cracked, littered the ground. By their position, disfigured, they were what was left of the tents and the rattlings. I have, the clerks pointed to the entrance, where the ground went from cracked and blackened to pristine. The dungeon keeps stuff in the room, the fighter protested. The dungeon does not activate a room until we step into it. Yet I do not believe it is capable of stopping us from affecting the halls from within it. This is because Tibbs did not want us armed. He glanced at Mez, despite how he feels. What is that supposed to mean? The archer demanded. What he did here, Eldar indicated a room, he did because he wanted to. Why would he want to do something like that? Jekyll demanded. To punish them, Tibbs whispered. What? Jekyll asked, surprised. Tibbs turned to face his friend and was surprised Jekyll's armor had survived the fire. There was earth essence woven through it now. That hadn't been there before Tibbs destroyed the room. For scaring me. He sorted through the intensity of the feelings. For making you think I'm weak. I don't think that. Jekyll protested and motioned to damage in the room. Don't you? All I could do that first time was crawl into a ball and let the rats bite me. I couldn't control myself enough to try to kill you. Control myself enough not to try to kill you right now. That doesn't make you weak. Jekyll replied. Doesn't make me think you're weak. I know, Tibbs said, but it's how I felt. It's why I needed them to suffer. I think we underestimated how complex the way fire affects Tibbs is, Irina said. It doesn't just feed on his anger. I don't think that makes it any safer, Jekyll said. Tibbs nodded. No more fire. At least not until we come up with a way for you to practice control over it that won't cause this kind of destruction, Irina said. I don't think, Jekyll began. He can control it, she said. He got hold of how water makes him act. He can do the same with fire. Jekyll's sigh was pained. I'm leaving you to figure out how to do the how of that one. How does the dungeon feel about what you did, Tibbs? Tibbs closed his eyes, scared Stowe would use that as his excuse to yell at him. That he didn't say anything was scarier. Stowe? I'm glad it's you wielding this kind of power. Aren't you angry? Why would I be? I killed all the ratlings in here. I heard their pain as they burned. They aren't living people, Tibbs. I make them knowing they're going to die. Right. You knew that. Well, their cries, their pain that sounded so good to him. I'm sorry for breaking your walls. It's okay. You showed me I'm not as ready to protect myself as I thought. Like I said, I'm glad it's you with this power and not anyone else. He dried his eyes and looked at Jekyll. Sorry for destroying all the loot. Just stick to your promise not to use the fire again, Jekyll said, and I'll consider it fine. He studied his friend. Worried he was holding back his anger, but concern was the only thing on his face. I will. He turned and headed for the exit. Tibbs still called. Yes? Now it was coming. Consider me impressed. Tibbs would have preferred the reprimand he anticipated. The bunnyling room became Mez's show of power. He stepped into the room as they were still planning how to deal with it and shot the lings as they came at him. He fired methodically and precisely. Even when Tibbs was certain the numbers were too many for the archer, he kept firing. Some arrows exploded on impact, taking out the group. Others pierced through the target to strike those behind it. But more were brought down by one burning arrow in the eye. Eyes? When they stopped coming, the closest pile of stone was half a dozen paces from the archer. Tibbs crawled through the warren and found 3 chests. One staff woven with an essence Tibbs couldn't identify, a normal piece of leather, and normal pieces for leather armor. Then they were in the maze hall and Tibbs sighed in resignation. I have this, Karina said, then looked at Kamdar. Unless you'd like to do the honors? The cleric smiled. I have no need to impress anyone with my gained prowesses. She nodded, then killed, then held her amulet and extended farther forward. Tibbs sensed the essence she sent ahead. It wasn't the usual controlled torrent that made him think of storms, but a ribbon of tightly woven air essence. It's slipped through the essence wall of the maze and beyond Tibbs's ability to sense. Karina's smile dropped away as she concentrated. Come on, she whispered, almost there. She took a step forward, then another. Tibbs stepped before her, keeping her from taking the next one. You're about to cross the triggers, he told her. But I'm almost there, she hissed, eyes closed. If you can't reach it, Jekyll said, it's fine. Can? She snapped. I just need a little more essence. Can't you just? I'm sorry, I'm busy. Whatever the reason, doing this kept her from drawing the essence. Drawing from the essence around her. He looked at the other amulet. It was the one she'd found on this floor, still wrapped in the leather. But she'd had that redone at some point. The crystal looked like any other stone at his loot, cloudy and gray, the size of his thumb. Setting many side by side, it would be impossible to tell which contained what essence unless they sensed it. This one contained no essence anymore, which meant it could take any of the essences someone put into it. Could he? Jackal? Oh, come on, Miss said. Yes, Tibbs, the fighter replied, his tone cautious. I'm going to try something with air. Make sure I don't fly off into the maze. Tibbs ignored the archer muttering in channeled air. He protested the hand keeping him in place. I can do the maze, he told Jekyll. I'll be fast enough, none of the spears will touch me. Fought against the shoulder. Come on, you big meanie. Let me go. Focus, Tibbs. You wanted to try something. Tibbs rolled his eyes. Where's the fun in refilling a dumb amulet? You do that and you can fly. He looked at the fighter suspiciously. The fighter had a habit of keeping him from having fun. You promise? I do. Double promise? If you break it, you're not spending any time with Krosa for a year. There, that would show him Tibbs was serious. I promise, Jekyll said with a chuckle. Tibbs placed a finger on Kirina's amulet and gently pushed essence into it. As much as he wanted to get this done with, he couldn't be too forceful. He had to get the essence to flow through the matrix and Kirina's hold on it. What are you doing? Grimdar asked. Refilling it? Tibbs replied. What does it look like I'm doing? You cannot refill someone else's amulet. Of course I can. Amulets are made to absorb essence. I'm just helping? Kirina sagged and smiled at him. Thank you. Yes. He pulled again. He pulled against the hand. Let me go. Thank you. Yes. He pulled against the hand. Let go. I don't. Tibbs filled himself with air and pulled his tongue at Jekyll as his shoulder slipped through the hand. It's okay, Kirina said. Tibbs readied to launch himself into the walls and stopped, confused. Bring it back. I'm sorry, Still said. Please, Tibbs whined. I want to fly through the walls. You'll have to wait for your next run. I can't reactivate it until you've left. He rounded on Jacko. You knew this was going to happen. You broke your promise. You're not doing anything with Crosser for a year. I didn't, not that I'd bother keeping that promise, but I wanted to have fun. He stumped a foot down and frowned at the lack of sound. He let go of air as he stumped it again. It hit the floor solidly, but he felt stupid for the tantrum. Did you know she'd be done so quickly? Jacko snorted. Do I look that smart? I figured I'd hold on to you as long as I had to. I didn't expect you to pull whatever it is you did. It's not like you were going to stay angry at me once you let go of the element. How did you do that? Kirina asked. He shrugged. When I channel an element, it's like there's stuff I just know how to do, but I don't know how I do it. Once you are in control, we can experiment with it. Tibbs, and he said as they started down the hall, what just happened? I refilled Kirina's amulet. That I know, but you weren't acting like yourself. It's the same as when you unleashed fire, and your reserve changed. Let's pass. And your reserve changed. Now it's back to being life. Right. He wasn't channeling water at the moment. When I channel an element now, my reserve becomes that, and it changes how I think. It makes me think like the element. Air's all about fun. Fire, I guess, makes all my emotions stronger. But you were yourself, while your reserve was all water, Stowe said. That's because I've been training for weeks at staying myself while channeling it. It still affects me a little. I'll get the other elements to be the same, but it's going to take time. And a lot of them can cause destruction like fire, so we need to be careful. You aren't fighting them alone, Karina said, and Tibs realized they'd reached the entrance to the boss room. Just the boss, I know, she said. You showed us how great you are. We all had our turn. Now we Kumdar didn't. As I have stated, the cleric said, I do not have any need to impress. You're sure? Mez asked. Taking all that down with darkness would impress me. I fear disappointment is what you would get. Even if I had such desire, fighting them all is beyond what I am capable of doing. Now that's cleared, Jekyll said. You guys deal with that. What did I just say? Serena asked. I'm not going to take on the boss alone. Jekyll protested. You're going to be there to deal with everything else. He looked up. Then, Stowe, help me out here. What exactly is he expecting me to do? What exactly is he expecting from me? Stowe asked. He probably wants you to say you want your revenge for how he tricked you last time. The fighter nodded. Oh, that's okay. Like Umdar, I have nothing to prove here. The smugness in Stowe's tone worried Tibs. He's not helping. Really? Jekyll said, surprised. You don't want a chance to kill me? I didn't say that, Stowe replied, and Tibs glared at the ceiling. What? Jekyll asked. I'm getting a bad feeling about the third floor. You can always turn around now, Genny said amused. Don't think you're ready for my floor. Tibs snorted. There's nothing I can say that's going to keep Jackal from fighting the boss. And after Stowe got me to promise not to get information on it from the other teams, I want to see your floor. Now that's settled, Mira said. We clear the rats and bunnies, the lings, and then we deal with the brutes. Fine, Jekyll said. Tibs, no fire. Yes, but also try to stick with water. Air was a reminder all the elements are unpredictable in different ways. Tibs channeled water and formed the sword. He'd finally get a chance to put into practice what Quigley had taught him. Jekyll looked at Karina pleadingly, and when she shook her head, he sighed and motioned them into the room. The instant they were in the creatures started moving, rushing them. Tibs jumped over rats and bunnies, slashing as he passed them. He wanted real opponents, armed ones. He caught a ratling, then faced a bunnyling wielding a spear. He parried the thrust and slashed. Another took his place, the spear piercing Tibs' side to the skin. With a snarl, he pulled his essence to stop the blood, only to realize it was water. He iced it through the wound and went on the offensive. His next bunnyling was more adept at using the spear to keep Tibs at a distance. Tibs smiled and he looked into the sword and used the extra reach to cut its head off. Then he sliced two ratling and tried to sneak up on him and sent three more flying back with a quick X attack. Not having to worry about running out of essence made for it. Wait, what? Not having to worry about running out of essence for it. Running out of essence made it a more practical attack now and much stronger. Another dead ratling, and when two bunnylings attacked him, Tibs made a second sword and used it to impel one while he cut the other. He needed to check with Quigley if fighting with two weapons was a thing. He turned, looking for his next opponent, but the only creature still standing were the three brutes at the back of the room, waiting for them. So, Jekyll asked, do we collect the coins now or after we've turned those three into rubble? And this concludes Chapter 80 of Stepping Up. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you Want to read the story? It is available on Royal Road. If you want to read ahead of what's Royal Road, you can do that on my Patreon and support me at the same time. And if you want to listen to me do these live, it's on Twitch every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. The links are in the notes. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.